Hello, guys. Welcome back to another exciting episode. I'm thrilled to have you with us today. We've got some amazing discussions lined up that you definitely won't want to miss. So grab a seat, kick back, and let's dive right in. But before we dive in, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. This is Emma, and you're listening to Let's Talk About English podcast.
Hey, it's Ben, and today we're talking about something that's super important if you're learning English, especially if you're planning to take one of the big exams like TOEFL or IELTS. We're going to give you the rundown on how to prepare for these tests and share some tips that will definitely make your studying easier. So, Emma, I know you've been through this process, right?
Oh, for sure, Ben. I remember preparing for the TOEFL like it was yesterday. It's no joke, but once you break it down, it doesn't feel as overwhelming. And that's what we're here for today, to help everyone make it through without too much stress. We'll talk about how to study, what resources to use, and even how to keep calm during the test. So let's get started, yeah?
Definitely. All right, so let's kick things off with the basics. When you're preparing for these exams, it's important to know the vocabulary that's often used in both the written and speaking parts. And let's be real here, there's a lot of vocabulary that can trip people up, right?
Oh, totally. Like, a lot of people get hung up on words that sound super similar but mean completely different things, or phrases that are just tricky. For example, when you're studying for these exams, you're gonna come across words like analyze and evaluate. They're both kind of similar, right? But if you don't understand the difference, you might mess up your answer.
Right, so when you analyze something, you're breaking it down into parts to understand it better, while when you evaluate something, you're judging its value or importance. It's subtle, but important, especially when you're giving an opinion in your writing or speaking.
Exactly. Another one that trips people up is compare versus contrast. These two are like fraternal twins, super similar but with key differences. You're comparing when you talk about the similarities between two things and contrasting when you focus on their differences. I've seen a lot of people mess that one up, like saying, I'm comparing the pros and cons, when they should be contrasting them.
Oh man, I've totally been there. But here's a little trick. Always remember that you're comparing the similarities and contrasting the differences. A little mental checklist and you're golden. But yeah, vocabulary is a huge part of these tests, and you want to make sure you're comfortable with the lingo.
For sure. And speaking of vocabulary, let's talk about some of the phrases you're definitely going to hear on the test. Phrases like, on the other hand, in contrast. For instance, as a result, you need to know how to use them to make your responses flow better. Otherwise, it's going to sound like you're just throwing random ideas out there.
Yeah, you're right. Those linking phrases are super important, especially when you're speaking. It's all about showing the examiner that you can organize your thoughts. And don't forget the because, so, and therefore moments. They're the glue that holds everything together.
Oh, for real. And we can't leave out idioms. Like, I know we're not technically supposed to use too many in formal writing, but when you're speaking, especially in the IELTS speaking test, they can make you sound super fluent and natural. Phrases like break the ice or hit the nail on the head are classics that can help show off your skills.
Yeah, that's a good one. But remember, don't overdo it. You don't want to sound like you're trying too hard. Keep it natural and just use them when it makes sense. It's all about balance.
Exactly. So, okay, let's switch gears a little bit and talk about some of the common mistakes people make when preparing for these tests. Then, what's one mistake that you see all the time?
I'd say one big mistake is not practicing enough under test conditions. Like, I get it, no one wants to take a mock test when you're not actually taking the real thing, but you gotta get used to the pressure. You can't just study vocabulary or grammar in isolation. You gotta practice timing yourself, especially on the writing and speaking sections.
Oh, for sure. I remember doing timed essays and thinking, how in the world am I going to finish this in 30 minutes? But after a few practice rounds, I felt way more confident. Same goes for speaking. It's not enough to just know the words. You have to get used to speaking quickly and clearly while keeping your ideas organized.
And that's such a good point. The speaking part is where a lot of people panic. But if you practice speaking out loud, not just writing, it'll help you get used to thinking on your feet. It's not about being perfect. It's about being fluent and clear.
Exactly. It's about fluency, not perfection. You don't need to sound like a native speaker, but you do need to speak clearly and with confidence. You want to be able to express your ideas in a way that's easy for the examiner to follow.
Right, and let's be real, Emma. You don't need to use fancy words just to impress them. Keep it simple but effective. As long as your ideas come through clearly, you're golden.
That's the key, Ben. And don't get discouraged if you don't get everything right. It's all about progress, and every practice session helps you get better.
All right, let's dive deeper into the real deal here. One thing I see people doing all the time is overloading themselves with study materials. Seriously, it's like they try to memorize everything under the sun. I mean, we get it, you want to be prepared, but it's important to focus on quality over quantity.
Oh, totally. I think a lot of people fall into this trap where they just keep gathering more and more books, apps, and online courses. But you don't need everything to succeed. It's better to stick to a few solid resources and really get to know them. Don't try to be everywhere at once.
Exactly. And let's talk about practice tests. A lot of people, especially with TOEFL or IELTS, just take a test and go, okay, that's it. But honestly, taking practice tests without reviewing them afterward is such a waste. You have to go over your answers and figure out what went wrong, what you could improve. Otherwise, it's like running on a treadmill without ever getting anywhere.
Yeah, that's key. I remember I used to do the whole take a practice test, forget about it thing. And then I realized I wasn't really learning from my mistakes. You have to sit down, look at your wrong answers, and figure out why you missed them. Was it a vocabulary issue? Did you misunderstand the question? Or maybe you ran out of time?
For real. And speaking of time, let's talk about time management. You know, when you're taking these exams, it's not just about knowing the content, it's about pacing yourself. A lot of people get halfway through their essay and realize they've spent too much time on the first paragraph, and then they rush through the last part.
Oh, that happened to me on my first TOEFL writing section. I spent so much time writing this perfect first paragraph, and by the time I got to the conclusion, I had like 2 minutes left to wrap it up. I felt like I was just throwing random sentences together. Not ideal.
Yeah, time management is everything, and you can practice this by doing timed mock tests. Just set a timer and force yourself to stick to it. This way you get used to managing your time during the real test. Trust me, you won't feel so rushed when it's showtime.
I completely agree. And while we're on the topic of pacing, let's talk about the listening section, specifically in the IELTS exam. The hardest part, I think, is when the speaker says a lot of information really quickly. It's easy to get lost in the details.
Oh, 100%. The trick is to focus on key words. When you hear the recording, your brain naturally wants to catch everything, but what really matters are the key words. So when you hear a name, date, or location, that's when you know you've got to pay extra attention.
Exactly. It's all about the big picture and not sweating the small stuff. But yeah, sometimes you'll get questions with really similar answers, and it can mess with your head. That's why listening to a lot of English outside of your studies can help. Movies, podcasts, YouTube videos, you name it. It gets you used to different accents, speeds, and slang.
Oh, definitely. I always recommend immersing yourself as much as possible. Watch stuff in English, even if you don't understand everything. Just hearing it over and over again really helps you catch the rhythm of the language.
Right. And hey, let's not forget about speaking. I know people get nervous about speaking exams, and for good reason, it's stressful. But honestly, the best way to practice is to speak as much as possible, even if it's just talking to yourself in English.
Preach! Talking to yourself actually works wonders. It sounds kind of crazy, but I did that all the time before my speaking test. I would walk around the house and just practice answering questions out loud. The more you speak, the more confident you'll get.
I love that. It's not just about learning the language, it's about getting comfortable using it. And if you make a mistake, who cares? It's all part of the learning process. The examiners are looking for fluency, not perfection.
Right. And speaking of mistakes, you know how people freak out about pronunciation? It's like they think they have to sound like a native speaker to do well. But that's not true. As long as you can be understood, that's what matters.
Absolutely. And there are tons of ways to practice pronunciation. Apps, YouTube tutorials, even repeating words you hear on TV. And listen, if you're nervous, just take a deep breath and slow down. No one expects you to speak like you've been living in the States for 20 years.
Exactly. No pressure, just be yourself and speak at your own pace. All right, we've covered a lot of ground so far. Before we move on to more specific test tips, let's do a little recap of everything we've gone over.
So far, we've talked a lot about vocabulary, practice tests, time management, and speaking strategies. Now let's focus a bit on some of the cultural differences you might encounter in these exams. Emma, have you noticed any cultural aspects in the tests that might trip people up?
Oh, definitely. One thing I've noticed with TOEFL in particular is how much they emphasize American culture. There's a lot of reading and listening content about American history, geography, or even pop culture. I know some students find that part a bit tricky because they're not familiar with those references.
Yeah, it's wild, right? They'll throw in questions about American holidays, traditions, or even the geography of the US. I mean, unless you're into American history or culture, it can feel like you're being tested on things you didn't even study. But here's the thing. If you're planning to take these exams, it's a good idea to brush up on general American culture.
Totally. Even just knowing the basics about things like Thanksgiving, the U.S. education system, and major holidays like Memorial Day or Labor Day can help. You don't need to memorize every little detail, but knowing the general context can really give you an edge, especially in the reading and listening sections.
Right. And another thing I noticed is that in the speaking section, especially in IELTS, you might be asked to share your opinion on various topics, like, do you think technology is a blessing or a curse? Or what do you think about the education system? It's not just about your vocabulary, it's about having an opinion and being able to express it clearly.
Oh, 100%. And honestly, a lot of students get freaked out by the opinion-based questions, thinking they need to come up with something super deep or intellectual. But really, the examiners just want to hear your thoughts and how you back them up. You don't have to be a philosopher. It's more about being able to structure your argument and express it confidently.
Exactly. It's all about presenting your opinion in a clear and logical way. The more you practice organizing your thoughts on the fly, the easier it becomes. And hey, you don't need to be a genius to answer these questions. Just make sure you give examples to support your ideas.
Exactly. You can always use personal experiences or general knowledge. And even if your answer isn't the most original, as long as it's clear and well structured, you'll do fine. And Ben, I've also noticed that the listening section in both TOEFL and IELTS sometimes features accents from different English-speaking countries, like British accents or Australian accents. Do you think that's something people should be prepared for?
Oh, for sure. It's one of the things that can catch people off guard if they're not used to hearing different English accents. I remember the first time I heard someone with an Australian accent, I was like, wait, what did they just say? It can definitely throw you off, but again, the more you expose yourself to different accents, the easier it gets.
Totally. Listening to podcasts, watching TV shows, or even YouTube videos with different English accents can help. The more you hear it, the more familiar it becomes, and it's no big deal when you're taking the test.
Exactly. And you know, a lot of students forget to practice with real-life audio. They study textbooks, but they don't listen to natural conversations. So I always say, get out there and listen to stuff that's not scripted. It could be podcasts, interviews, or even random YouTube videos. The more authentic the audio, the better.
I love that point. And I know we've been focusing a lot on the speaking and listening parts, but let's not forget the writing section, which I think can be super overwhelming for people. A lot of students get stuck because they're unsure of how to structure their essays, right?
For sure. One of the main mistakes I see with the writing section is students not following the right structure. They either write too much, too little, or they don't organize their thoughts in a way that's easy to follow. The examiners are looking for clarity and coherence. They don't want a rambling essay. It's got to have an introduction, a clear argument, and a conclusion that ties everything together.
Exactly. And this is where practicing timed essays comes in handy. You need to learn how to get your ideas out quickly and clearly within the time limit. One tip I always share with my students is to spend a few minutes planning your essay before you start writing. That way, you're not just sitting there thinking, what do I write next?
Right. A little planning goes a long way. It doesn't have to be a full-blown outline, but just a few key points to guide your essay. And don't forget about grammar. People tend to focus a lot on vocabulary, but if your grammar's off, it'll hurt your score.
For sure. A lot of students overlook that, but grammar is huge. Even if your vocabulary is strong, bad grammar can seriously drag your score down. So focus on writing clean, well-structured sentences.
Right. And don't be afraid to keep it simple. A clear, simple sentence is better than a complicated one with errors. Keep it concise, but don't leave out important details.
Exactly. And remember, practice makes perfect. The more essays you write, the more comfortable you'll become with the process, and the faster you'll be able to write high-quality responses under pressure.
All right, we've covered a ton of ground today, from vocabulary to time management to cultural differences. I think we've given our listeners some solid tools to help them prepare for the big exams. But before we wrap up, let's talk about the final piece of the puzzle, mindset. Emma, what's the best way to stay calm and focused when you're heading into the exam?
Oh man, this is huge. The right mindset can totally make or break your experience. I know a lot of students go into these exams with a lot of stress, and honestly, it's easy to get overwhelmed. But you gotta remember, it's just a test. It's not the end of the world, and stressing out about it isn't gonna help you perform better.
Exactly. I always tell people to focus on their preparation and not on the results. You've done the work, you've studied, and now it's time to show what you know. Getting anxious isn't going to help, so just take a deep breath and trust the process.
For real. And speaking of deep breaths, remember to take breaks while you're studying. You can't cram all that info into your head at once. Your brain needs time to process and rest. It's about balance. Go for a walk, have a snack, listen to some music, whatever helps you recharge.
Yeah, breaks are key. It's like exercising. You don't just go full throttle 24/7. You need to give yourself time to relax, or your brain's going to shut down. And speaking of relaxing, get enough sleep the night before the exam. I know it's tempting to stay up late and cram, but you're better off well rested.
Oh, 100%. You've got to sleep. Your brain actually processes and stores information while you sleep, so pulling in all-nighter is actually counterproductive. Trust me, you'll do better with a good night's sleep.
Definitely. And don't forget to eat a good breakfast the day of the exam. You don't want to go in feeling hungry or sluggish. Get something with protein, maybe some eggs or oatmeal, something to keep you fueled and focused.
I couldn't agree more. And another tip? Don't stress over the things you can't control. The test is already happening, right? So focus on what you can do. Take deep breaths, pace yourself, and just stay calm.
Exactly. And remember, even if you don't ace the test, it's not the end of the world. It's just one step in the process. You can always retake the test. And each time you do, you'll be better prepared.
For sure. It's all about progress, not perfection. And hey, one more thing I want to mention. If you're feeling down or discouraged at any point during your study journey, just know that everyone goes through it. You're not alone, and you're doing great.
Amen to that. And with that, let's wrap this up with a quick vocabulary recap. Emma, let's go over the key words and phrases we talked about today.
Absolutely. So first off, we covered words like analyze and evaluate, which are super important for the speaking and writing sections. Remember, analyze means breaking something down, and evaluate means judging its value.
And we also talked about compare and contrast. Compare is for similarities, contrast is for differences. Simple, but super useful.
Exactly. And don't forget linking phrases like on the other hand, for instance, and as a result. Those are crucial for making your speaking and writing sound organized and coherent.
And we can't leave out the idioms. Things like break the ice and hit the nail on the head. These can really boost your speaking fluency. Just don't overdo it.
And finally, the mindset piece. Don't forget to stay calm, get plenty of rest, and take breaks. You've got this.
For real. So now it's your turn. Go ahead and put these tips into practice. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss out on more helpful tips like these.
That's a wrap for today. Thanks so much for tuning in. And remember, keep studying, stay confident, and we'll catch you in the next episode. Bye.
Take care, everyone. You're going to crush those exams.